Hello and welcome to A Drink to the Past, the only podcast where we screw up the intro before we do something else. Hi, I'm Sean Michael Patrick Thompson, the host of Drink to the Past, and we have to drink because we already screwed up the podcast, and you'll never know why. But we couldn't have our theme song today, so we're very, very sorry about that. This is my co-host, Flapper Girl.
Chris. Hi, I'm Chris. I am not a flapper girl. That's just a character portrait that keeps on getting set back to that because that character keeps on living.
Huh. Is that how that works? So, anyways, today's beer of the week is a Moscow Mule, which we've already been over. I have a neat cup, and it's got a little charm on it that was from a bottle of Pyrat rum. I'm not sure if I should pronounce it pirate or pyrat. It's Pyrat, and it's obviously supposed to be like a, look at us, we're like piratey, but slightly more pretentious because we're spelling it wrong. But it's yummy rum, so, what you gonna do?
Good ass rum.
Anyways, mostly tastes like ginger beer with, I don't
Rum and ginger beer.
Yeah, well, there's no rum in a Moscow Mule, it's vodka, but don't really taste much of the vodka, mostly just taste the ginger beer, so, yeah, I'm not sure, I put in one of those little shooter bottles, I don't know what it is, but, I don't taste it over the ginger beer. This is very strong ginger beer, I think, might be part of the thing. This is stronger than most ginger beers I've had. And it's watered down with some kind of stuff and vodka. So...
Sugar stuff.
Yeah.
Sugar water flavor shit.
It's not terrible, but it mostly just tastes like ginger beer. So maybe I should put in more vodka or more whatever the other stuff is. I'm not sure what a Moscow Mule is made of, other than vodka and ginger beer and stuff. And a copper cup. The copper cup is the important part, and I have an aluminum cup. I already made that joke, so... I have to drink.
Lime juice.
Lime juice, huh?
Yeah. And ice.
Huh.
You know.
I guess I should have put ice in it, but I didn't.
I don't typically associate limes with Moscow.
You're just
Do they?
missing all over the place.
Right? Yeah. It's like I'm drunk already. I'm not that drunk.
Sean.
Yeah.
I'm kidding.
Not quite
I'm
that
not
drunk.
that drunk yet.
Now here's the awkward part of the podcast, where in the podcast I ask if the podcast is getting recorded.
The podcast, according to the podcast recorder, is getting recorded. So I'm
Okay,
going to go
good.
with that, and hopefully it'll be fine. So,
Yeah.
Anywho, let's go into our What You Playin' segment. So,
And also
Chris-
I have a beer.
Oh, that's good. What kind of beer are you drinking?
I'm drinking from Denver Beer Co. Graham Cracker Porter. I believe I've had this on the show before, but
Probably.
it's still pretty delicious.
I've got a couple of those that I am bringing on my camping trip, because I'm going camping again. Ha ha ha. Screw everybody else who's not going camping. Anyways, Chris, what you playing?
In addition to Dead by Daylight, which just seems to be, I seem to be playing that quite a bit these days. I've also been playing Overcooked 2, which is kind of a interesting.
I saw the trailers for the first one. It kind of looked like this interesting, kind of funny co-op party game thing.
Yeah,
I wasn't
and
totally sure who all I would play it with, because I'm not sure my kids would grasp it quite as well as like an adult player base.
it is a game that requires like a pretty good amount of coordination and like communication in the moment. So it's kind of been fun to play where you start shouting for something, or someone throws an ingredient and it just falls into water or something. So yeah, I've been having a lot of fun with that. I also picked up Cave Story Plus.
Okay, I played the original Cave Story on Wii U very briefly.
Yeah, and actually the original Cave Story was a freeware game for PC, and I played that very briefly several years ago. Never enough to get, but I've got more into it this time, and I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, originally we got it because it was like advertised as this little adventure game that you could go through with 2 players, and you can go through it with 2 players, but it's like really weird in the multiplayer. because like the camera only follows one of you, and like even if they like walk away from the other guy, it'll be like they're off screen, and basically what they do almost doesn't matter. It's like it was a really crappy multiplayer experience, but it was a fun like single player kind of adventure little thing.
Uh,
But I didn't spend
you
a long time with it.
you never beat it?
Mm-mm.
I was thinking I was gonna try and beat it since it's been on my radar for so long, but
Yeah. Cool.
it has an achievement called Doggy Style.
Kinky. Wanna watch?
Well, it's just I had a dog on my head the entire time I was fighting a boss, so you know.
Nice. Yeah, so I've been playing more Last of Us 2, and I think I got to the first point where, like, people really start complaining about the story, I think, because it's got kind of an interesting... I'm not going to, like, do any major spoilers here, but I'll give, like, a tiny glimpse of what I'm seeing, which is, like, maybe lightly spoilery. Because basically, like, I got to a point in the game where suddenly it's like, okay, you're up to this point, and now we're going to kind of, rewind a little bit and see what the bad guys were doing up to this point. And you actually get one of the bad guys as your playable character, and you're like, okay, that's a kind of an interesting thing, but it's weird the way they implement it, because, like, you've basically been hyped up to this point to really, really, really hate this person, and you're like, okay, now why am I supposed to care about what you're doing for this time that, my good guy, quote unquote, has been trying to, hunt you down and kill you, more or less. And at the same time, like, in your party as the bad guy are several other bad guys, and, like, you already know because you've played the good guys part of the story that some of them die and stuff like that, and it's like, it's really kind of strange to, like, try and get into characters that are, A, somebody you've been hyped up to hate the entire game for 9 hours, and B, people who are, like, they're gonna die anyway, so why should you care about them? And I'm like, maybe this is just why people are complaining about this game so much, is that it's just, like, if they did this in a different order, I think maybe I could understand it a little better and be like, like if they had done like one chapter as good guy, one chapter as bad guy, and go back and forth a little bit, then maybe it would have been like, by the end of this, I'd been like, oh wow, you killed this person that I really kind of liked, or, whatever ends up happening. So it's just kind of like, I like all the story that's going on, but I think maybe it's just a strange presentation, but I'm like, I still don't understand the major negative backlash that this game has had from that. But I'm like, maybe this is like the tip of the iceberg or something. I don't know. So it's kind of a weird experience. But so far, I'm still like very positive on the game. I'm very happy with what has happened in the good guy story, and so far the bad guy story is like interesting, but seems oddly placed, in the middle of the game instead of staggering it throughout, is maybe how it would have come across better. I'm not sure. I haven't completed the bad guy part either, so it's like, it's kind of hard to say at this point.
Okay.
But what do you think about that kind of thing, Chris? Have you ever played a game kind of like that, where it kind of gives you both perspectives on something?
Like, both antagonist perspective and protagonist perspective?
Yeah.
Kind of thing? Most games have... Scratch that. Most stories have that to a degree, but I think it's a lot more common in, like, TV shows than it is in video games.
Yeah. That's a good point, because you can see that, like, a good example of that in, like, really caring for the villain is, like, Marvel's Daredevil on Netflix. Makes you really kind of understand Kingpin and what his angle is, and, where he's come from. He's a great villain because he's got that. But again, it's like, that's kind of interspersed here and there throughout Daredevil's story. It's not like, you go in 6 episodes of the 13-episode season, and then suddenly they're like, oh, but But Kingpin's okay. You know, he's
Okay.
got his own stuff going on.
Okay, this is actually, I can think of a game where the antagonist gets a pretty focal role, and it's Live a Live,
Hmm.
or Live a Live. It was where you got to play through. You had a bunch of different protagonists, like different time periods,
Huh.
and you got to play through their stories separately. So you had like a little circle, and you could just play through their stories in any order. And then once you were done with all their stories, you got to play a new story was unlocked for a knight character, and not. And I'm spoiling the game, but it's like an old game, and I feel like this doesn't ruin it too much. You find out at the end of the story, this is like the story of how this guy was driven crazy and decided to become the main antagonist. And then you get to play through the epilogue with any of the main characters, including the antagonist, and that changes the ending depending on who you play.
Huh. Neat. Yeah, because the closest thing I could think of is in Fire Emblem Radiant Dawn, where you start as these basically two kids from Dain, which is the enemy country to Crimea, which is the country where Ike is from in the first game, where you're like, okay, he's the great hero that saved the world and all that, but you're here in the bad guy country that was ruled by the Mad King, and the common people didn't really know all that much about it, about what was going on and stuff. And so you're like, oh, Ike is like this tyrannical, horrible person that came through and murdered our king and killed the Black Knight, who's this giant symbol of power in our empire and all that. And so kind of having that perspective was really cool, even though eventually you like meet up with Ike and you're like, oh, you're okay, let's team up.
And it also now that I'm thinking about it, I want to compare it to like Tales of Symphonia New Dawn favorably, because Ike actually did all that shit,
Yeah.
and he had a good reason for doing all that, but it doesn't change the fact that he actually did it, and it wasn't like a cop-out. It was just another perspective.
Instead of Dawn of the New World, where Lloyd kills a whole village full of people for seemingly no reason, and you play the game for 20 hours and you still don't have the reason, and you get bored and quit because the game sucks.
So I looked it up.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I'm kind of excited to hear this. This is like...
Okay.
No,
So,
I'm never
spoiler
going to play
warning.
this all the way through.
Spoiler warning for our listeners who want to play this terrible
game.
game.
I have that game anymore. I bet I probably traded it back into GameStop. It was so fucking bad. I'm like, okay, give me my 45 cents. Thank you, GameStop.
So, it wasn't Ike. It was an imposter.
Oh.
That's it.
That was it?
That's it. That's it.
That's the master storytelling.
That's the twist.
It wasn't Lloyd. Just
wasn't Lloyd the whole time.
Looked like Lloyd. Or something.
It was just a guy who was pretending to be Lloyd. So, you know...
I'm almost not surprised because of how bad the rest of the storytelling was. Because, like, it introduced a bunch of characters throughout the story in the part that I played from the first game that were like, oh no, Lloyd wouldn't do that. I don't believe you. And that was their entire personality, was not believing the antagonist of this game because they knew Lloyd.
So there's this trope
I'm like, how
called
did you make all these great characters? Crap.
Bad writing, not having the same writers, voice actors, gameplay, direction. You know, any of the shit that made the original game good.
Yeah.
I mean, really, who wants to play a mill?
Nobody.
Yeah, he's a pathetic
that game was so
nothing.
weird too, because it's like you got Emil and you got Marta, and both of them are like in the character, spectrum. They're just like there, and you can't play any of the other characters that ever come into your party, because like I think I had what's his name that looks like Kratos for some reason, but he's not Kratos. but you're just like, okay, so did this art director be like, ooh, Kratos looks cool, like, let's make a character that looked like him. I think his name was Richter,
Okay.
and he comes into your party and travels with you for a long time, but you can't play him. And I think I got one or two of the people from the original game in my party at some point, and you can't play them. You can only play Emil and Marta, and the other two spots, if you're playing multiplayer, can control monsters that you, like, capture for some reason. Because it's like, yeah, let's add a weird Pokemon aspect that's not as cool. Like, why?
And also, you can't control them. They also got rid of a lot of... So you could only play that 2-player as opposed to 4-player, which you could with all the other Tales of Symphonia. With all... Not Tales of Symphonia. All the other Tales games.
Tales games, yeah. Except for maybe Tales of Fantasia. I don't remember. Because that was on Super Nintendo, so... Might not have had 4-player. Might have had like 2 or 3-player, because multi-taps were weird back then. Anyways, shall we get into the news and booze?
Yeah.
So, news and booze. There's not actually very much of it this week. But there's an Xbox game showcase scheduled for July 23rd. So that should theoretically be interesting. One of their teases on Twitter has like a couple of things that they're like obviously going to reveal more about Halo Infinite there. But that's basically all we know that's there, other than, you know, some more Microsoft first-party titles. So, hopefully it'll have some interesting stuff, because I would like to be hyped for Xbox Series X, but I don't know that I'm going to be.
Not unless they make another thing that's like Steel Battalion and has that controller again.
Was that the giant mech one?
Yeah. That was the giant mech one. That was the one game where, when Xbox came out, I looked at it and I was like, this looks cool as hell. And then, you know, I was a kid and could not afford... Didn't have an Xbox and also wouldn't have been able to afford the game.
Yeah, I remember seeing that and being like, I want to afford this, but, you know, I can't afford this because I'm a kid.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that would be kind of cool, you know, now that I'm a, like, reasonably financially stable-ish person. Maybe I'd think about something crazy like that, but I don't know. Unless I could use the controller for other hilarious purposes, I'm not sure I would do it. But maybe if I could use the controller for other hilarious purposes. There was also a Nintendo Treehouse live stream, which was today or yesterday, I forget. Anyways, point of the story is they showcased a Paper Mario gameplay, was mostly the reason that they went live, and it was interesting because beforehand on Twitter and on their official YouTube description, they said there's a new game. It was worded really weird because it was like basically they were telling us it's a game in an existing series that Way Forward is developing that they've never developed for this series before, and everybody was kind of expecting like, oh, it's a new Way Forward game somehow, and it turns out that it's just Way Forward is developing the next Bakugan game.
So, it's Bakugan, but with more titties, is what I would understand. Because, you know, it's Way
That does
Forward.
sound a lot better than what I'm hearing on Twitter. Basically, everybody's pissed off about this because they were like, oh, man, we wanted a new Shantae or something, and I'm like...
You just got a new Shantae.
Right?
And also, apparently, the new Shantae wasn't that great. Because I had been playing the Shantae previous to that, and had been enjoying that quite a bit, but...
Cool. And
I have not heard.
Nintendo Switch Online games for July will be The Immortal, Natsume Wrestling Championship, and Donkey Kong Country, which is the important one because I'm sure nobody has heard of the other two.
Yeah, Donkey Kong Country is the name on that list. Not only
I was hearing,
recognize,
I was talking
but
to somebody
expect
online
quality
that was
from.
like, oh yeah, Natsume Wrestling Championship actually is like a really fun game, and he actually said, no offense to David Wise, but this Natsume Wrestling Championship has better music than Donkey Kong Country. And I was like, wow, that's actually some pretty high praise. I'm like, okay, maybe I'll check that out. But, yeah. That's the NES and Super Nintendo. The Immortal looked kind of interesting from the trailer, too. It's like you're some kind of mage-type dude wandering around dungeons and doing stuff. And it looks like it's got a couple of different kinds of gameplay mechanics. So it looks interesting. I'm not sure I understand any of it, but could be kind of cool. So I don't know. Maybe I'll check that out because, I mean, I'm subscribed. I'll get these games for free. Check it out. All right. Anything else News and Booze related? I guess we didn't rate our booze yet, so what do you give that beer there, Chris?
On Graham Cracker Porter, I'm like, that's at least a 15, not higher.
That is a yummy one. This thing just tastes like ginger beer, and it's getting all ginger. This is like super strong ginger beer, so I'm gonna call it 10. It's just, I don't know, I'm not a huge ginger beer guy. It's fine.
So
but it doesn't feel like the vodka and other stuff made it more interesting than just plain ginger beer.
I watched a YouTube video of like a beer expert comparing beers, and he uses a lot more specific words than either of us do, and I'm like, we're not beer experts. We're beer
enthusiasts,
amateurs, or enthusiasts. Yeah.
Right. According to a panel of experts, you need to have 10,000 working hours of experience in a category in order to be considered an expert. So,
I'm pretty sure I don't have 10,000 hours of drinking beer in my life.
How many hours of drinking beer I have in my life, because I've forgotten most of it.
10,000 hours is a lot of hours
for drinking, because you forget some of them, right?
I feel like you'd have to be
hours total, or 10,000 hours you remember.
That's 416 days, solid days of drinking, and that's drinking while you're able to remember and still pick out flavors, as opposed to, all right, I'm drunk now, I'm going to switch to the cheap stuff.
Right. Yeah, I don't remember if it was actually 10,000. It was something like that. There was some.
No, 10,000 is correct.
Okay.
That's right.
Hooray! I quoted whatever thing that I heard one time correctly.
You quoted that thing right.
Yeah. Anyways, let's get into our table topic, shall we? Because we love table topics. So, the table topic this week is advantages and disadvantages of tabletops in person versus online, which is a very frequent thing, I bet, between tabletop groups, because probably a lot of them are not meeting in person anymore with the pandemic situation, including our group. So we've been doing pretty much all online gatherings for our regular Saturday night tabletop gaming. So
yeah,
it's been kind of interesting. Because there's a lot of differences, and some of things are kind of better, and some things are kind of not the same. Like, I kind of like just having people over in my house, I like being a host and, being like, hey, guys, how you doing? There's beer in the fridge. Who wants some taquitos? That kind of bullshit.
Even though your wife usually does the...
My wife usually does the feeding part, but I always make sure there's beer in the fridge. But, yeah, so it's I feel like you kind of miss that aspect, but at the same time, then I don't have to buy as much beer, because I only have to, have enough beers for me to drink. Yeah, so that's... it's not as expensive, because I don't have to buy as much beer. But, obviously, there's, these different caveats that... sometimes it's a little more hectic to get people in the same room together, because then people gotta drive, because our group is like all over the kind of Denver metro area. Some people are driving from our group for half an hour or 45 minutes, depending on who ends up coming. If my house is the location, and if somebody else's house is the location, some people are driving more than that, because my place is like kind of centrally located for our groups, which is one of the reasons we kind of use it as a go-to.
Yeah.
But, like if our buddy Josh hosts, then our buddy Tyler has to go, like...
Drive for about an hour or so.
Yeah, probably about an hour, I would guess, from his place, because he's way the hell up north, and they're, like, down in southeast Denver. So, yeah.
So, travel time is a thing in person. Table space is a thing.
Yeah. It is kind of nice not having to worry about, I've got all my books around, and the DM screen is here, and 15 people brought laptops.
We all got to fight over the plug or whatever.
Right. Luckily, I installed a big old power strip there, so that's not usually an issue anymore. But you do have to figure out, like, okay, I'm here, and I'm putting my laptop down, and whoever's sitting closest to it, you have passed their power cord, like, hey, plug this in, would you?
And then you gotta watch how much you drink, so that you're...
Yeah, because that's one of the nice things, especially as, DM, I can... and when I'm hosting, I don't mind. I'm like, oh yeah, I can drink as much as I want. But when everybody's at home, everybody can drink as much as they want.
Yeah.
So that's a thing to kind of be a...
That being said, I still vastly prefer in-person games. And it's because online, there's no spatial distance for audio. So when someone talks, they're talking over everybody else.
Yeah.
As opposed to people being, like, seated next to each other and some people being more distant.
That's definitely one thing, is there's, like, literally no side conversations because it's not possible. Because you can't just be talking to, the guy on your side of the table while I'm, like, as DM, theoretically, like, I'm DM, you're a player, you're talking to another player, between turns, and I'm focusing on the player whose turn it actually is. That kind of thing can happen. That thing happens a lot. But it doesn't work in a voice chat situation where everybody's in the same voice chat, and I've done some things to mitigate that in some of my online groups where, like, we have, like, a side Discord where we, like, text chat each other, for tactics and, like, are you okay? Do you need a heal? Should I, bother attacking the boss this turn, or should I go heal you? Stuff like that. So there's a little bit of workaround, but it's certainly much, much different from actually just having a casual conversation with your buddies. It feels a lot less personal to be online because, you can't, bullshit with your buddies when you're just sitting there, playing D&D. You're it's almost all about the game, and, there's a
side
little bullshit here and there,
conversations, despite the fact that there are lots of DMs who don't like their players getting distracted, they serve kind of as a social lubricant that seems pretty necessary. Without the side conversation,
Chris
it's almost...
said lubricant.
God. It's almost necessary for some people to focus for extended periods of time. It's almost necessary to have those side conversations.
Yeah, and I wondered what you think about this, Chris, because one thing that I haven't had in our group, but I have had in another online group, because as the DM, I'm constantly like, your turn, and I'm constantly focusing on somebody for some reason or another, and then, I address all the players when it's, the bad guy's turn, and they're acting and, affecting everybody. But when I've been a player in online groups, I feel like I'm silent for a long time, and then I speak for a little while, and then I'm silent for a long, because I don't want to interrupt anybody. I get, and it's almost kind of weird, because, like, I normally, like, in person, I would, like, maybe throw in a little stupid-ass joke here and there. I'm a dad. I throw in a stupid joke here and there. And
I mean, you did that long before you were a dad, but continue.
It's true. But yeah, and I feel like now that's, like, harder to do appropriately in an online setting when you're, everybody's kind of talking around each other. Particularly, there's usually the DM focused on one player at a time. Depending on the situation, maybe a couple of players. but usually it's like one-on-one, DM to player, DM to player, and then after they figure out what they're doing for their turn, it's DM to the next player, DM, and it'll just be one-on-one from them. And
Yeah.
it becomes a little almost awkward, and I felt like it was weird because I got into this other group and I knew the DM and nobody else in the group. And so it felt a little like almost intimidating coming into this new group where normally when I'm in a new group setting, I'm just like, whatever, I'll, get a read for people, I'll crack a joke here or there, I'll talk to, whoever's there. But in this online setting, it was like, I don't want to step on anybody's toes. I don't want to, crack a joke at the wrong time and offend somebody, and it's weird shit that I don't ever think about. I'm just like, because when I'm in person with people, I'm me, I don't have to worry about it. But when I'm online and I'm with people I don't know, there's almost this like, kind of sixth sense that I'm like, am I doing this? And then
You're
at the
missing
end
a
of the
lot of
night,
like
I also
the
get
body
like,
language.
yeah, that's maybe part of it. Because it's
that's
very hard to read people through nothing but voice chat. I'm like, I
So-
don't even know what their faces look like.
what
is-
I realized through having a lot of online games
Mhm.
is that the way I approach these things is very similar because I mostly rely on speech and tone
Mhm.
and don't so much look at people. Which, I mean, there might please don't read too much into that. But
Right.
I do notice that a lot of the more socially outgoing people, like yourself, and like a few other people I know, they're much quieter. And it's because they lack a lot of those feedback mechanisms. So not having body language in voice chat is a pretty major deal. A lot of people are much quieter and a lot less themselves almost.
Yeah, and I think to an extent it can be beneficial because I'm not myself necessarily. I can get really deep into the role play when I'm playing with a group that I don't really know. I can really kind of get my head into the character, and when I am talking, when I am acting in character, I'm there and I am the character. So I think it can be beneficial for that, but it certainly has its weird, it for as much benefit as it has to the characterization and the roleplay, I feel like it has almost as much detriment to the actual social interaction of real person to person, because there's a certain amount of socialization that comes just through roleplay,
And
but I feel like that part is almost missing
I
in an
totally
online game.
I totally agree with you. It's almost to the point where I would say that when you have a tabletop game online, you can either be social or you can play the game, but you can't really do both. It's very. It's only when there's like a break in the game that people are social again. Yeah, in person is better,
Yeah.
for so many reasons.
So there's one thing I kind of want to get into, though, is particularly we've been using Roll20, but I bet there's probably other, different ways that people have been going around this. But we've been using Roll20 a lot to kind of map out scenarios, and, it's got a built-in dice roller that everybody can see and stuff like that. And I've thought that that's actually a really nice tool to use as a DM. That I can have the map prepared beforehand, that I can have, tokens that, look kind of like, because I used to do a lot of mapping out way back when. You remember I had that little, like, dry erase marker map. I used to use that all the time, and then I misplaced it somewhere. I don't know what happened to it, and I never got a new one and we kind of got this theater of the mind thing going. So it just kind of worked for our group naturally enough that I never bothered buying a new map to use, but I did kind of miss it, and it comes up that there's, mechanical things that I'm like, I imagine the scenario differently than a player, and they're like, oh, I thought I was right next to the boss because I said I was stealthing and moving toward it, something like that. And I'm like, oh, well, I was imagining the whole party is 150 feet away, Stuff like that is, a little nicer with a map, and I think having this kind of mapping tool like Roll20 or something similar that just everybody can use has been very beneficial for me as a DM in describing the scenario and getting every player kind of in the same mindset of where they are, what they're doing, and what the bad guys are doing. All that.
I kind of agree with that.
Do you think that's been helpful as a player in my group, that we've literally played the same campaigns in Roll20 and out of Roll20?
Yeah. It also... I can point to many times when there's been miscommunications in terms of, like, distance or even number of enemies.
Yeah. Where it's like you're in Roll20. Oh, if you see 3, tokens of Dragonborns or whatever they are that you're fighting, I can tell what to kill. M&M guys. I talked to Nick about that. That was fucking funny. So you owe him whatever you bet him.
Yeah, it's a good thing I bet him nothing. So I'll give him the nothing the next time I talk to him.
Nice. So yeah, that was that's one of the kind of boons of that. But at the end of the night, I think it's like almost better as a DM because I can like be more clear about what's going on, what kind of environment you're in, how far away you are from all these things, and there's some mechanical aspects to that are very, very hard to communicate accurately to every player in a theater of the mind kind of role-playing game. So mapping out, first of all, is I think an important thing that maybe I want to get back to, even once we do eventually get back into in-person meetups. I'd like to, start doing that more. But also, I think Roll20 and that kind of thing is kind of nice for that because, these kind of technological tools for mapping, I think, do a better job than I ever did as a DM when I had my little graph that I, write on with a dry erase marker. And I'd be like, okay, I draw the, little forest area. Here's a path. There's a river over here. Here's, I draw little circles. They'd be trees and, bullshit like that. And that's all I would do. And I feel like that was a lot more work. Maybe not a lot more work, but it's certainly a different kind of work. But it's at least as much work because I'm having to do all that on the fly while we're in the middle of a session. I'm like, okay, hold on, let me erase the map and let me draw the next map. Whereas I can do that all like slightly beforehand, have the maps that I need at the time, beforehand, and when we get there, I'm just like, okay, players are from this map, you go to this map.
And I do feel like those tools are useful. One of the things that I forgot about that I'm just now remembering that I complimented Discord about was that there was the voice chat, and then there was the separate text chat, and it allowed for almost 2 streams of information. Like you could post technical stuff in the chat so people could read it and just understand it, while you could do descriptive things with the voice.
Mm-hmm.
So that was very nice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So yeah, I'm with you with the everyone being plugged into the tools and having access to those tools is useful. But I will also add the caveat that you can set up those tools to be used in in-person session as
That's true, because I
well.
was thinking of that, because I've seen people with, like, big fancy tables with, a TV screen built in that they're doing these kind of mapping things on and stuff like that. And I'm like, I probably wouldn't, do exactly that, but I could figure out some sort of way to do this, especially since, like I was saying, half the people bring a laptop to an in-person meeting. I could, run Roll20 in person, theoretically, and then
Yeah.
just the one or two people that don't have a laptop could look over your shoulder and be like, okay, I'll give control of that token to your laptop, and then you can move their token too on their turns for them, stuff like that. So theoretically, this wouldn't be all that difficult to implement. But yeah, I think it would maybe be more natural in an online setting than it would be in like that sort of setting, unless you were to have like a fancy table with a TV built in or something, a monitor that you could, because I've seen them like that they're like the monitor is like inlaid in the table, and then they're moving minis on top of the monitor, and I'm like, dude, that's actually kind of cool. As a novice woodworker, I'm like, I want to build one of those. But as like a person with finances and stuff, I'm like, I don't want to pay to build one of those.
Yeah, seems expensive.
Yeah. And time consuming, and children and things. I'm like, if I tried to build one of these, I'm like, I wonder how long it would take just to have time and not cut off any of the children's fingers. And one of the other kind of things that I was kind of getting to earlier, but we kind of didn't quite get to, was as a player, I feel at the end of the night, I almost feel like, especially with the group that I didn't know, that like, because I didn't speak very much, it almost felt like I was being ignored a lot of the time, which was not true. I don't think, now that I've played several sessions. I'm glad I stuck with it, because the first session I was just like, dude, nobody was talking to me. Nobody, like, does any of these guys like me? Do they like my character? And it's like weird stuff that I don't normally think about, that I'm just like, yeah, we had some fun roleplay moments, or whatever. And
A
I had
little
some fun bullshitting and drinking with my buddies. But in that kind of setting, it's like, nobody's really saying anything to me until it was like 3 sessions later. I had a kind of an interesting interaction with another character, and then they were almost apologetic about like, oh, was that okay? I wasn't stepping on your character's toes to call you out like that, was I? And I'm like, no, dude, that was awesome. So it's kind of just a weird sort of thing where I feel like you get a lot of more negative feelings from the players around you than are necessary.
So that's interesting to me, because the way I feel about it is when I play with generally with people I like know pretty well,
Right.
like whether it's you or the other group I play with.
Mm-hmm.
I've known those people for quite a while. I know them pretty well. But I mostly miss a lot of the positive interaction.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm in, say, voice chat with someone I don't know terribly well, I'm not so worried about how they feel about me. Because when I don't have access to those feedback mechanisms, I mostly just don't think about them at all.
Huh. I don't know. I feel like not having access to those feedback mechanisms makes me think about them more and like be like, oh man, am I doing something wrong? Am I pissing this guy off?
That's kind of funny.
Yeah.
Because it's funny that I'm kind of the opposite, where I don't have access to those mechanisms, so those things aren't real to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not. It's like, of course, I'm not trying to go out of my way to piss anybody off. I don't want to be a jerk to anybody,
Right.
but
Yeah.
if I can't see the look of disgust on your face, does it even exist?
right? But I'm like, I can't see the look of happiness on your face. Is it a look of disgust?
Yeah.
Just weird how that works, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, yeah, so I think both versions, whether you're in person or online, I think both of them have benefits and both of them have drawbacks, kind of like, any other thing. But
Yeah.
I wonder how it would be like, I don't know, because I feel like there's maybe a certain unreached threshold that neither of us have really done. Because I don't know if you've done any tabletops online. Like with Roll20 has a whole video chat thing that you can do through just Roll20, but like none of us ever use it,
Yeah.
right? So I'm like, would that maybe enhance it a little bit if you had like you could see everybody and they're talking and all that kind of thing. But, at the same time, I'm just like, how much would that enhance it? I'm not.
Um, I guess that's a good question. I find that when people are on video, uh, it's not as natural because it's not as natural as sitting in the same room. And usually, I'm not taking a look at everybody's face at the same time. I mostly just ignore it.
Right.
Now that might point to some issue with me where I'm just like, oh, I just don't pay attention to body language. But it's I usually it's vocal tone is what I hone in on a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I don't know. Do you ever get that explanation about how much communication is body language?
At some point a long time ago in high school or something, and I forgot most of it.
Yeah, but it was yeah. So a lot of that is gone, and it's a lot of that I would pay attention to subconsciously. I'm sure.
Right.
Which is, but it's still not quite the same, even with all webcams.
Yeah. So maybe we have to have like Star Wars holograms or something of ourselves before we'll actually be able to really.
We would need to have the not be staring at a screen. We would need to be able to have like a face we could look at. Like we can't share looks with other people.
Right. Yeah.
We can see what's on another person's face, but we have no idea if they're looking at us or not.
Right. Yeah. That's a kind of an interesting kind of thing too, because it's like, yeah, you're looking at the screen and I'm looking at the screen, and whatever other 5 people are in the chat room would theoretically be looking at the screen. But if you're at the same room at the same table, you'll hear somebody laugh across the table and they're looking at somebody else. They've got a totally different conversation, got a totally different point of view on what's going on. You might not have any idea what they're laughing at,
Yeah.
And you're not even looking at them dead on like you would be in this kind of thing where, like, right now, I'm like, look at me, I'm right here on the screen, because you can check us out on YouTube, because we're out on YouTube. Shameless plug. But
I'm definitely the beneficiary of this, because you see a flapper girl and I actually see her face.
Right, yeah. Yeah, so you'd maybe have a better perspective on this than me, because, I do a little bit of video chat, like, with my parents and stuff, but it's, like, mostly it. And then it's, like, largely one-on-one, or, like, me and the kids, are talking to my parents or something. So.
And when it's one-on-one like this, it's like, I know who we're looking at, so it's a little closer to the real thing.
5 or 6 people D&D group.
Yeah.
Slightly different.
It's much tougher.
Any final thoughts on this here topic?
Online has some distinct advantages, but I still vastly prefer in person.
Yeah, I would say I prefer in person as well. But I have had a lot of nice times as a DM with Roll20. I think it's a great tool, and I think I'm definitely going to start mapping stuff out again, because it's just using Roll20 has reminded me, like, oh, this is really, really helpful for your group of people.
Yeah.
Particularly something about us. We all just imagine stuff differently, and I'm just like, no, you're not in reach of anybody. Oh, but I thought I charged into a group of 4, and I'm like, no, the group of 4 is over there. You charged into the one guy.
And I feel like that's a problem that's in almost every group too. When you don't have a map, is I mean, I still prefer it at table for ease of play, but there is a trade-off.
Right. All right, so shall we get into our video game topic?
Yeah, let's.
Video game topic today is couch co-op versus online co-op. So it's largely intertwined with this kind of, online versus in-person kind of thing. And I think we could extend this to just multiplayer in general. It doesn't necessarily have to be co-op because, a lot of games online are, some are co-op and some are more adversarial or competitive or, whatever. So.
Couch multiplayer versus online multiplayer, I guess is what this could be retitled. And one thing, I'll start us off. I'll say, having done a lot of online co-op as of late in games like Dead by Daylight and Overcooked and Unrailed, one thing I've really missed is the ability to smack the player next to me, like physically.
Nice. I can see that because I haven't played as much online like anything. Like back when we were teenagers and like into the college years, I played a crapload of in-person, particularly Halo. That's something I forgot to say. I was playing a little Halo, but I'll talk about it next week on What You Playing. So, anyways, So yeah, but Halo is like a game that was like, I feel like it was made for in-person because I did some amount of online Halo gaming, but most of it was like, if nobody else was home, then me and one of my brothers would go online in Halo, and still we'd be together, but we'd be doing, some kind of online battling thing instead of the, co-op campaign or something when they started doing more online stuff. And it's kind of different because I've done very little like online co-op except for back when I did like World of Warcraft. I did a fair amount, but even then, that was back when we had this little place called Maximum Gamer. Look, I still got their mouse pad. This gaming cafe. That was a long time ago because they've been closed for, I don't know how long they've been closed. It's been years.
It seems like gaming cafes tended to go out of business as soon as they sprung up. So.
Yeah, but most of the time when I played WoW, I would go to this gaming cafe so I could be, in a room with, everybody I knew and play, World of Warcraft or whatever we happened to be playing. Because we played a lot of World of Warcraft, but we also played a lot of Call of Duty and Counter-Strike and, tons of different stuff. And it was kind of nice not to have to, upgrade my own PC. But then the gaming cafe realized, oh, wait, we've got to upgrade 50 PCs? That's too expensive. So they didn't last very long after that, I think was largely it. Except for, like, one of them, like, the guy was, like, a one-man team that ran this whole store. It was called 3DXI. And there's this one guy that would fix all the PCs and order new parts when they needed it and upgrade them all when they needed it. And it just got to be to the point for him where he was, like, after they closed, he was there for like 6 hours every night, like installing patches for every game and stuff like that. That he was just like, I can financially make it work with one man, but
it's not worth it.
It's not feasible to do that much work in a day. Yeah, it's like I'm making ends, but I'm working, fucking 20-hour days sometimes he was doing, depending on what games got patches when and stuff like that. And, the graphics card needs replaced in this machine, and this machine's motherboard's out of date, all sorts of stuff like that. And he was this insane PC nut. He was pretty awesome dude. But, just eventually caught up with him, and he was just like, "Nope, I'm done." And hiring one more person was just not in the budget.
So that be noted for anybody who would want to run a gaming cafe.
Yeah.
Your profit margins are going to either mean you have to work yourself to death, or actually, yeah, that's about it. You'll have to work yourself to death.
Yeah. My next beer of the week is from Alaskan Brewing Company. It's the Kolsch, which has a killer whale on it. So I'm like, is it a killer Kolsch? That sounds kind of cool, but it just says Kolsch and it's got a orca.
Kolsch.
It's not bad.
When I searched Kolsch,
kind of what?
I searched Kolsch in Google. It came up with kolak, which is apparently a type of pastry that holds a portion of fruit surrounded by puffy dough.
Kolache.
Kolache?
Yeah.
How is your beer spelled? How's that spelled?
Kolsch.
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 You can
That's
see this on
oh,
YouTube.
That's a style of beer.
Oh, really?
Yeah. From
I knew that.
From Germany.
Yeah. So generally they're on the lighter spectrum of ales. Golden City Brewery, our good buddies, have a really good Kolsch. If you've had their Clear Creek Gold, that's a Kolsch style. There's also a Kolsch from Denver Beer Company. Both of us have had, Princess Yum Yum.
Oh yeah, I love Princess Yum Yum.
Yeah, raspberry Kolsch. So it's generally a lighter style of ale. This one is actually kind of has a little decent malt backbone. So I'm digging it pretty well. That's pretty good. Almost a hint of maybe banana or something kind of in there. So that's kind of neat. Let's go with 13. That's nice. It's nice beer. Yeah, so most of the couch co-op that I've done is most of the gaming that I did as a child and, through my early 20s. I did I had 3 brothers and a sister. We did all sorts of, in-person, like, hey, we're all home, let's play, all these kinds of games. I didn't do much in the way of online, except for, like I said, kind of World of Warcraft and, some kinds of online games. If nobody happened to be home at the time, I would do, like, I'd play Rock Band online, was one of them.
Yeah.
Like, oh, hey, let's find somebody online to jam with or whatever, which is kind of a funny one. It was kind of cool though playing Rock Band online, because sometimes you'd find people that are like playing like drums on expert, and you're going through like the what was the Van Halen one they had, Hot for Teacher, with that crazy drum solo, and you're like, how are you doing that? That's insane. But then I'm sure, some people were looking at me playing on expert on guitar and being like, oh my god, that's insane. So, it's, that's the instrument that I chose to be good at Rock Band, and I was okay at the other ones, and, everybody's a little different. But, yeah, I can't say that I've ever really had any amazing online co-op experiences, except for, I'm gonna have one that was probably the best online co-op experience I've ever had. And this is going to sound weird as fuck, because it was in Legend of Zelda Triforce Heroes. You didn't see that coming, did you?
No, I didn't. Although I should have expected it.
Right? Out of me, the fucking Zelda guy. Like, I'm a Zelda nut. But, yeah, I got Triforce Heroes, and I played it, some online, some offline for a while, and I actually really liked the online co-op in that game, because of all things, the weird emoji communication was fucking hilarious. It's like when you're trying to tell somebody, like, hey, I'm on the other side of this ravine, right, because I could get here with the hook shot, but now there's on this side of the ravine where you can't see, there's a rock and I need to blow it up with a bomb, but I have the hook shot. So you're like trying to communicate with emojis like, throw me a bomb so I can blow this up so the rest of you can cross. And it's hilarious. It's amazing. I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, use your item. And that was one of the things that really set it apart for me, was just communicating like that was kind of cool. And then kind of the puzzle solving was really cool too, because it's like, really the puzzle design in that game was freaking amazing anyway. But one of the best online co-op moments that I ever had was in this game when they released a free DLC patch. And basically you could download this extra content, which was basically like this Uber dungeon full of like stage after stage. I think it was like 30 stages of like mostly combat challenges with some dungeon like puzzle solving, but mostly combat. And I remember the night it came out, I downloaded it and I went online and I found a group, and I went with this group through like all of the stages, but the last one we kept retrying and it eventually got to the point where we had been playing this game together for like 10 hours, something like that, and we're just like, 3 of them have been retrying this last level. We're just like, we can't get it. And it got to the point where I was the first one too, because I was just like, I had to be up in the morning for something. I don't remember what it was anymore, but I was just like, oh my God, it's like 2 in the morning or something. I have to be up at 6 or something like that. I wasn't gonna get any sleep, but I was like, guys, I have to go. And I'm like, and they're like, no, we're so close to getting this, because if you finished it, then you got the fierce deity armor, and you could use like the sword beams from the fierce deity from Majora's Mask, and it was like the most busted armor in the game.
You just weren't able to get it.
Yeah, and I wasn't able to get it. And I came online, several times after that. And first of all, I never again got a group that was as far as me. I got candy now. Cool.
Nice.
But I like, basically, you had to go to the when you were in an online group, you had to go to the person who was the least far in the dungeon gauntlet thing, and basically go to where they were. So I never once again even got another group that was at the last level, and I never again got a group that was as good as that first group I had, because I remember going online again and again, and I'm like, okay, we're a few levels away, I'll try and grind them through, and they were just like terrible. I'm like, why do you guys suck so much? And I couldn't get them through. And eventually I finally beat that level on single player, but it felt like a cop-out because I used the mechanic in Triforce Heroes where, like, basically when you're playing on single player, you have 3 characters, and you can immediately switch between the 3 of them. And so I would, like, set one up to be hit by an attack, and then when the enemy was coming to hit him, I would switch to the other one, and I would stab the enemy in the back, and as long as I wasn't controlling either of the other 2, they were completely invincible. So I was just like, now I feel like I cheated to get that. I got it on a cop-out fucking victory.
So I guess that is, like, the big difference is playing with random internet people with online co-op.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't feel like there's actually that big of a difference when you play side by side with a friend, or if you play online with a friend over voice chat.
Right.
The only big difference, which I mentioned at the start, is that you can't smack your friend for, screwing around.
Right.
Like,
yeah, because
go to the next stage.
Similar.
I'm going to move over here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of a thing we could kind of say though. Is it, are we comparing online with friends or online with randos?
I feel like if you're comparing they're not even comparable. Playing online with random people is almost like playing online with very unpredictable bots that occasionally call you a piece of shit.
Right. I have so many bad experiences I could share about that with World of Warcraft that I won't even get into.
Yeah, so I'd say no, we're not including random online people who may be okay, or may be just awful.
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying, is there anything different about how how you play online games with friends as opposed to games you'd sit next to each other and play with friends? And I really don't think there's that much of a difference. I feel like you have the same kinds of conversations and experiences playing video games online with friends.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm trying to think of another like big thing that I've done much online with co-op, and I'm like, yeah, mostly it was pretty much the same as with friends, except there's one game that kind of sticks out to me as weirdly different with friends in person versus online because of a specific mechanic it had. Chrome Hounds was this kind of customizable mech game where you customize your mech and you go fight the other guy's mechs and blow them up and stuff, and it's pretty cool. But it had a mechanic actually that was it was hilarious when Xbox Live changed and totally screwed this mechanic and made it not work anymore. But basically, when you were playing online, there was in-game voice chat, and later Xbox changed to make it like if you're playing in a party with any other player ever, then you're just automatically connected with an Xbox Live voice chat, which on the outside, that's not like a terrible thing. That sounds like it would be very convenient, but it really kind of broke one of the mechanics in Chrome Hounds, because as you were going in Chrome Hounds, it's kind of like you're kind of capturing bases as you go, like some kind of things. And the bases are also radio towers. So when you capture a radio tower, it extends your communication range. But then to go capture another radio tower in order to, get further into the enemy's base or whatever and find their mechs and blow them up, you have to go out of communication range. And you couldn't talk to your buddy anymore until you took another communication tower. And it left this kind of interesting, really cool, like, semi-realistic feeling with you that it's like, okay, I'm going to risk going out where I can't call my buddy for backup if I need it. I can't communicate with him. If I die, he won't even know, right? Until he gets out there and takes that radio tower.
As a proximity.
Yeah, it's like every radio tower had like a little, you could see it on your map, like this is how far, this circle is where you can communicate. And then you take another radio tower and it gives you another circle, and it kind of, combines with your other areas. So eventually, if you take over every radio tower, then you can communicate the whole map. But in online matches, when you're playing like co-op, like me and you versus two other randos, then it was a really cool kind of mechanic where it's like, okay, I'm going to go out of radio range now and try and take this tower. I don't see anybody by it. But then, like, if I end up dying by that tower, then it's like a few minutes afterward, my brother's like, oh, wait, it's been a while since I heard from Sean. Uh-oh.
And you just find your corpse.
Right, yeah. Hey, what's that? Smoking pile of shit in the ditch? Uh-oh.
So I guess that is a different thing you can do with online co-op that you can't really do with couch co-op is proximity chat like that. Like, apparently, there's a game called Project Winter that I've watched people play online. I've never played myself. But that has secret traders. It has 2 secret traders in the game, and B has proximity voice chat. So the further away you are from people, the harder it is to like hear each other.
Mm-hmm.
So they can go off and do like traders things, and just talk with each other in like a corner of the map somewhere. So I thought, so I really like that aspect of things. I think to add something, or there's like situations where somebody will be like screaming for help, but they're very distant from everybody else, so they'll be like, "Help me!" and you can just barely hear them. You're like, I think I heard something. So,
yeah, I haven't seen many mechanics like that, but I feel like if they were implemented more, they could be really, really beneficial and cool to online games like that.
So, take note, game developers. Online co-op games that have proximity voice chat have the potential to be fun as hell, particularly where you can hear someone screaming on the other side of the map. Apparently, Friday the 13th, the Friday the 13th game, before that ended up in legal hell, had proximity voice chat. And you could hear somebody like screaming somewhere else on the map, and you could be like, "I'm not going to go in that direction. Jason's probably over there. I'm going to go over here instead."
That'd be kind of interesting. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, we've had a lot about that. I'm trying to think of anything else specifically. Yeah, I think in general I just prefer couch co-op better because, it's again that camaraderie that, hey, come over to my place. I'll have beers and stuff,
Yeah.
But
And
I don't think there's anything, like, objectively wrong with online co-op, but I feel like online co-op is, like... I've very, very seldom done any of it because it just feels like... To me, personally, I feel like I couldn't get into it as much. It's like I don't want to dedicate that much time, which is why I haven't picked up another MMO and, it's been like 7 years or something since I played WoW actively. Maybe 8. I don't know. But it's like, I just don't want to, commit to this kind of like, scheduling debacle that ended up being a lot of what WoW ended up being, because it's like, I can't always raid on the same nights as you, and even though now my schedule is more set, it's like, I don't want to dedicate those nights to raiding most of the time, or even any kind of online game, right? I don't want to have a set online game night most of the time, but
yeah,
if we can just wing it and like come together and like, hey, everybody come over to my house, let's play some fucking Diablo or something, I would be all over that.
Yeah.
Or, whatever else. Even Halo, Team Fortress 2, or World of Warcraft. If I could play World of Warcraft, every now and then on a whim, I would be more likely to get back into it. But that's not how it works. I'm not, I have to pay for the whole month, even if I
feel like that's,
a 1 day a week or something.
That's kind of getting into something else where World of Warcraft is a game where you can't just drop in and out. It tries to habituate you into playing all the time.
Yeah.
But that's...
topic for another time.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Anything else specific on this, Chris? Last thoughts?
I've had a lot of fun with in-person multiplayer and co-op. I've had a lot of fun with online co-op, and unlike the tabletop, where I feel like there's a major difference between in-person and online, I feel like both are pretty much equally fun.
You can kind of see that. It's weird, because, like, from my perspective, I have very limited experience doing much online co-op, though, because, like, like I said, most of mine is, like, even if we're playing online, we're in the same room together, playing WoW or whatever. Me and my brothers all had our computers in the same room and stuff, even when we weren't at Maximum Gamer, And when we were playing Dungeons and Dragons online, and, we used to have LAN parties back in the day. We'd, you and our whole group, we'd come in and bring our whole PC setups and play Team Fortress 2 or whatever.
Can't do that anymore. Not because of coronavirus, but because my current PC weighs something like 75 pounds, so I can't carry it myself. It weighs like over half of what I do.
Wow.
Yeah.
You're light.
Yeah, I am tiny.
I think I could
but-
probably eat one of you for breakfast.
You could, I mean, I would make you much fatter, for sure. It might take you a couple days.
Right.
Uh,
Chicken fried Chris.
chicken fried me. I'm not a chicken.
Huh.
If anything, I'm long pork. That's all I had to say on that topic.
All right. In that case, I guess we'll go to the final piece of the podcast. Unless you do, let's do a Sean brings a thing, because I have video here. So just and also a stack of books that I stole from my brother. I have the Monster Manual 4. You didn't expect that, did you?
I didn't even know there was a Monster Manual 4.
Yeah, there's a Monster Manual 4 and 5. And probably 2 and 3 as well, but they were not in my brother's stack of books. So this has all sorts of your favorite monsters, like Clockwork Pony and Demon. I think that was in the original Monster Manual.
Yeah, I'm pretty
Dwarf
sure
Ancestor.
Clockwork Pony.
Inferno Spiders in Eberron.
Okay, that's actually kind
Loath-touched
of cool.
Drow Ranger. Loath-touched Creature, just as a template. That's kind of neat.
Okay, I'm in.
Spawn Ambusher. I haven't actually looked through this book.
Although-
I'm just looking through it for myself the first time. So this is
Clockwork
kinda neat.
Pony,
Yeah, I
though.
think these were. Yeah. Oh, should I look that up? I forgot. I don't know.
Clockwork Pony. I'm wondering, just based on the name and the concept, why waste the ink?
Just cause,
like-
I guess.
Okay, I know Clockwork things exist. I know
There's no
ponies
index
exist.
in here. This
I'm
book
pretty
has no
sure-
index.
I can come up with the stats myself for Clockwork Pony.
All right. Okay, the contents have all the things, so that should theory. Okay, Clockwork. 30, I think. It's an oddly laid out book because it has no index. That's strange to me. Clockwork Pony, yeah. Always neutral, medium construct. Dark vision, 60 feet. No languages.
Yeah, they didn't have to write any of that.
Mm-hmm.
If they wrote the words Clockwork Pony, and then underneath it, the stat block said it's a Clockwork Pony, I'm pretty sure that's enough to run a Clockwork Pony.
Yeah, basically, it's got, like, no incredibly interesting... Like, yeah, it's just, like... It's kind of strange, actually, looking at Clockwork Pony. It's got, like, a stat block and nothing else. It doesn't have any unique attacks or nothing. Anyways, yeah, so I think these are 3.0 handbooks, which is one of the reasons you might not have been as familiar with them, too, because you got in, well, you had more 3.5 books, didn't you, than 3.0?
Yeah, let's see. At the height of me having 3.5 books, I had all three of those, the 3 core books, plus Manual of the Plains, plus Deities and Demigods, and a book called, what was it, Ghost Walk? And Eberron.
Cool.
And out of all of those books, Ghost Walk is the only one I felt like was kind of a waste of ink and paper.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like all the other books were pretty cool.
Yeah, I didn't have a ton of 3.5 books, but I know there was, like, a lot of them, and, like, I would borrow bits and pieces that I'd like, memorize, like, oh, this feat is from this book, and I'm going to remember it later because I'm going to cheese shit. And that was about all I did when I looked at other people's books, because our buddy Owen had a big collection. My brother Dan apparently had a fair collection, which I've now inherited some of accidentally. So, yeah. As well as the World of Warcraft role-playing game. I didn't know there was one of those.
I believe there's also a Diablo role-playing game at some point.
Neat.
Yeah.
Yeah, I might play that if it doesn't suck. But I gotta wonder, like, is it better than just playing D&D and making like Diablo style bosses and throw some demons at people?
Probably not. It's probably identical to that, actually.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was D20 based, so, you know.
Right. All right. So, well, let's get into our final segment here, where we just talk about random bullshit until we run out of random bullshit to talk about, or somebody says something really, really awkward. So, yeah.
I did promise.
I also have been playing Halo, which is something that I was going to get into and then I forgot. Because I finished Halo 2, and overall it was just, like, less good than Halo 1. But it's really interesting that they added a bunch of, like, extra scenes and stuff to give more context to what's going on in Halo 2 in the Master Chief Collection version. And it's... some of those are pretty cool. And also, it's really odd, though, that they went out of their way to, like, reanimate all of the scenes from Halo 2 originally and put, like, modern, like, good-looking graphics on them. And then I went back into Halo Reach, which is the newer game as opposed to Halo 2, and it just doesn't look nearly as good. It's so weird. Like, in gameplay, it looks better, but...
not in the cutscenes.
yeah, not in the cutscenes, because the cutscenes are just like, you can tell that they really went all out in the Halo 2. Like, it seriously looks like, you know, a competitor with all the, you know, games coming out today. It doesn't look like a 2002, 2003 game, whatever that was, somewhere in there. But then the game that actually came out in the HD generation is Halo Reach, and it's like, oh, it doesn't look as good as Halo 2. Halo 2 also was kind of weird, because it was, like, kind of nostalgic that it had all the same glitches, but it was kind of weird that they didn't fix all the same glitches, and, you know, I'm, like, running it on way better hardware than my Xbox 360.
I still
and it
prefer that
problems.
to what they did with Majora's Mask 3DS.
Right. But
Where...
this one is, like, it's not, like, any, like, game-breaking glitches. It's just, like, you know, like, you get into this place with a lot of particle effects and enemies on screen, and there's, like, this massive slowdown. And I'm like, why is that a thing?
So it's framey as the previous game was framey. So that shouldn't have happened.
Yeah, I'm like... And it has, like, these weird, like, lag spikes is what it feels like. Is like you're going, and then the game, like, freezes for, like, 2 seconds, and then you're where you should have been in 2 seconds if you kept going, which is one of the things that I noticed. Maybe a loading zone. Might be, yeah, something like that. Although Halo is, like, weird about that, because Halo, from number 1 to Reach, at least... all have this thing where when you hit a loading zone, it'll say loading, and then when it's done, it'll say done. And it doesn't have all of those. So it's just seems like an out of place, like, random lag spike, which is really strange. And I'm not sure exactly what causes that, but I thought it was interesting replaying Morrowind that it still has those. But Morrowind is a game that came out in 2003 that has literally not been upgraded at all. And Halo 2 is a thing that they've added all of these modern-looking cutscenes to. They've re-released as a anniversary edition game.
You know what that makes me think of?
And all of the things are still there.
Is the Breath of the Wild speedruns, where they go so fast that they just lag in midair, and it just freezes for a couple seconds,
and then they jump forward. That's what it feels like when you get to these things. I know what you're talking about, yeah. And it feels like that, but you're not going 25 million miles an hour over a giant-ass open world. You're going, you know, regular speed through a small enclosed level, because that's how Halo levels work.
So... It just sounds like they didn't implement those loading zones very well.
Apparently.
Loading and unloading chunks of the level.
Not to say that any of it was, like, terrible, but it was definitely just an objectively worse experience to Halo 1. But,
Huh.
you know. And then I found out that apparently Master Chief Collection on PC doesn't have Halo 3 or 4. And it's because it's like they're grayed out in the menu. And I thought, oh, maybe I have to beat Halo 1 and 2 in order to get them.
Oh, I think...
But apparently they're just releasing later. So Halo 3 comes out like next week and I'll be able to play that. And I'm like, that's weird that they didn't tell me that on PC. Because, like, in the Steam description, it's like, you get Halo 1, 2, 3, 4, ODST, and Reach in the same collection. Which is technically true, but you can't actually play all those, so it's weird that the, like, Steam description didn't say that, I thought.
Sorry to interrupt with something totally unrelated, but they're posting strap-ons in a different Discord chat right now.
Neat.
I'm curious as to the context.
You gonna tell all of our listeners about the context of these strap-ons?
No. But I'll find out for myself.
All right. Can I watch?